Hello, people that are joining us. I see the waiting room is dwindling down as I enter into the main room here. Thank you for joining us. I'm gonna wait just a second as more people pop on. Thank you for joining us for SBA Maine Export Week. It's gonna be all week, fun-filled every day. At this time, 11:30 is the start time. The fun fact I'll get to a little later is that if you register for one, you register for them all. So this is being hosted by the SBDC and the CEI Maine's Business Center. And there's a big picture there. So today is day one. We're going to talk about why exporting, am I ready? Then we're going to get to day two, where it's going to talk about the export resources in a little more detail, especially the Maine International Trade Center that we have in Maine that really helps out. Day three is going to be all about export financing. We're going to get into that, about different programs, especially that the SBA offers to help with financing export activities. We're going to talk to some local banks as well. Day four is going to be all about developing the export business plan with Grace from Women's Business Center. And she's really going to highlight that because that is one of the more important things, first stepping stones to starting the export process that we'll get to in this presentation as well. And then day five, we're going to round it out with an export panel of small businesses that have the kind of in your shoes, but a little ahead of you, right? So small businesses that are already exporting, and they can give you kind of the ins and outs, some of the programs they use to help get started, some of the pitfalls maybe that you can try to avoid when you're getting into exports. And then of course, the benefits of exporting and how it has changed their businesses. So that's straight from the peers. Tends to get a lot of good questions in that group as well. But as I said, when you registered for one, you registered for them all. So we are going to use the same link. I think you'll still get reminders each day of when you're going to be starting these webinars. You signed up online. If you know someone who would benefit from these webinars, then please, you can of course have them still sign up even after day one. It's also being recorded. We're recording this on YouTube. We put it on. We'll send you the slides from the presentation. I just want you guys to enjoy the presentation. We're going to be talking about a lot of different information on each day. So just enjoy it. It's going to have a recording. You're going to get the slides. So you're going to get all the information that you need. Just let it soak in for now. Like every webinar that we're doing now, if you want to ask questions, by all means, feel free to ask questions. But I prefer the question to go into chat. And I just sent a chat message to everyone. So you should see a little blinking if you're new to Zoom on the bottom of your screen, probably that is where the chat is. If you want to just say who you are, where you're from, that'd be great as well. So we all get to kind of know each other. 37 people did sign up for the entire week's presentation, but I don't expect all 37 to attend each day. With our series, you can also subscribe so that as videos come out, you'll get notified automatically. So we also couldn't have done this whole week presentation without help from resources. Women's Business Center, Small Business Administration, Import-Export, Gorham Savings, Maine International Trade Center, U.S. Commercial Service, Bangor Savings Bank, Navitrade, Export Tech, Jinx Products, North Maine Kelp, Dental Lace, and SCORE. And of course, the Small Business Development Center myself. So big thank you to all of you for helping to put this together for this week. Now, without further ado, we're going to go on with the show. This is the kickoff speech, get the troops going. And we're going to have Regional Administrator Mike Vlasic, who oversees the SBA programs, offices, and operations in the SBA's New England region. He serves Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And fun fact, he is the first person from New Hampshire to hold this position. So guys, this is one of our own, okay? This is not some stranger. He is a New England born and bred, right? So I'm gonna have you take it away, Mike, and I'm gonna stop share and you can go from there.
Thank you so much, and thank you to our Maine-based SBA office, as well as our resource partners in Maine. You do remarkable work day in and day out, and I love this partnership, and I love that we are reaching beyond Maine into New England and quite frankly throughout the country. And happy World Trade Month. One of our top priorities at the SBA is to help small businesses and entrepreneurs enter and excel in the international marketplace. And there's good reason for that. Of the 264,000 businesses that exported last year, 97.3% of them were small businesses. Small firms exported $413 billion worth of goods. In today's global interconnected economy, it's no surprise that there are major small sales opportunities abroad for U.S. businesses. Nearly 96% of consumers live outside of the U.S., and 2/3 of the world's purchasing power is in foreign countries. Particularly for businesses looking to pivot and continue to recover from the pandemic, getting into exporting or expanding on that front could be a good way to find a new revenue stream. And that's why it's so important that you are participating today. And quite frankly, as I like to say, you're our best messengers to other businesses, your colleagues. You have the most credibility. So if you can help us get word out, we really appreciate it. It's great that you're participating in this event today and this week. It's a great way to learn from experts in the field and from each other. And now I want to introduce to you a true expert, Claire Amon, Deputy Associate Administrator for SBA's Office of International Trade. She is responsible for helping U.S. small businesses grow by reaching new customers in the global marketplace. Working with 21 U.S. export assistance centers, SBA district offices, and public and private sector partners, the Office of International Trade directs export loan programs, the State Trade Expansion Program, and other trade assistance to encourage and assist U.S. small business exports. Claire is a member of the Senior Executive Service with over 20 years of experience working on international issues. Before joining SBA, she served as USAID's Deputy Director for Management Services, where she oversaw the agency's operational readiness, workforce safety during the COVID-19 pandemic, and a wide range of management services, including the agency's real estate portfolio and planning efforts for the post-pandemic future of work. From 2015 on, she was selected as a White House Leadership Development Fellow and spent a year at the OMB working on federal IT, open data, and data-driven decision-making for the Federal Chief Information Officer. She has extensive experience working on international development policy and programs, research and evaluation, and developing public-private partnerships. Claire, thank you so much for your time this morning and for your public service day in and day out for years before and years ahead.
Thank you so much, Mike and Peter. It's really great to be here. I know that was my bio. Now I like to say that I work on trade, not aid. And so it's really, I'm really enjoying doing it. So thank you so much. I wanted to welcome everyone and just again, echo Mike in saying Happy World Trade Month. This is really kicking off. Well, it kicked off last week. I know it's a whole month. But I'd really like to welcome and congratulate everyone on the call for their interest in exporting. Whether you are already exporting or you're just interested in it, I am here to tell you about some of the resources that the SBA has to assist you in that journey. One very important thing to know about exporting is that really, I think the key to the success of it is really getting to know what we like to call the export ecosystem. And that's really what this week is kind of bringing together. I think it's a really valuable opportunity because it's bringing together kind of all of those partners. And again, I know as Peter said, you'll be able to access sort of any of the week's events that you're interested in, sort of in your own time. But it's really important to kind of understand all the people and resources that are actually out there in Maine to support you in your exporting journey. So just before I begin, I would like to also just thank some of those Maine resources that I know sort of are going to be sharing their information all throughout the week. Especially we have, the SBA Maine District Office And I know Brad Curry put his information into the chat box. So he's like the district international trade officer for Maine. And he's really a great point of contact for you. And he knows, I think, all those players in the Maine export ecosystem. There's also the U.S. Commercial Service, which is a very important partner for any small business that is interested in finding out about foreign markets. Then there's the Maine International Trade Center. They are actually one of our State Trade Expansion Program grantees, and they provide a lot of value-added services. And there's a lot of other resource partners, which that I know are going to be presenting. There's Women's Business Center, there's the SBDC, and a lot of other partners. And then finally, I know that Maine banks are engaged in supporting some of our SBA, our special SBA export finance programs. I know that Bangor Savings, Gorham Savings, and Camden National Bank have all actually used our Export Express loans over the past few years. And I think that they're going to be presenting some of the success stories about export financing later in the week on Wednesday. And so if you are interested in financing, I really encourage you to go over and listen to that and attend that session on Wednesday. So my role here is to sort of convince you why exporting, right? So that is my goal. And I hope that I will have moved the needle a little bit with some of you on that. But really, why does the SBA even have special resources focused on exporting? Like, sort of like what is the big deal? It's really because being able to export and have, find foreign markets can be a great growth strategy for small business. It's really one of those things that can help a small business really grow, employ more people. We know that businesses that export, they grow faster, they employ more workers, they pay those workers more, and then they are also more resilient to sometimes shocks. We definitely saw in the pandemic, businesses that were able to export and had some of those different markets and weren't reliant just on one market were more resilient during the pandemic because they were able, right? They had other markets that they could, had customers in that maybe were not as affected. So really exporting, we really see it as a potential growth strategy for small business. In Maine, there's really a lot of opportunity to grow and diversify sales, especially I know you have sort of products like seafood and timber. We have Canada, right, our neighbor right to the north, where we have a free trade agreement and a lot of potential for trade. And then there's also the Nordic countries where we have trade agreements. And so there are also just some very good markets for some of Maine's products. But however, we do know, right, that we do try to sort of survey small businesses about, how are they doing and how are they doing with exporting. A 2022 survey by the National Small Business Association, it did show that, and sort of this is steadily we see, is that one of the biggest challenges for non-exporting businesses is that they really don't know enough about exporting. They haven't heard about it very much, and they really don't know where to start. And that's again why I think it's just so important kind of getting to know that export ecosystem, because there really are a lot of people and resources out there to support you. We also know that small businesses who are exporting, right, their top challenges to sustaining or growing is finding those foreign buyers and trying to navigate foreign import rules, right? These are always challenging. I mean, exporting is more complicated, right, than just selling in America. And then 1 in 3 small businesses have had issues collecting payments from foreign companies, right? And so it is also important to know about things like trade credit insurance and things that you can put in place to try to protect you, right? If you're having issues about collecting payments. So there definitely are, I think, some barriers to trade, but I think the more that you learn about it and know about it, and also, connect with businesses that are already doing it, the sort of, anyway, that's really the path forward. And the SBA, and in particular, my Office of International Trade, we also have a lot of resources that we offer you, working very closely together with our district office. So we do have counseling and training specifically for exporting and international trade. We have on our website, sba.gov/international, we have a trade tools website that has a lot of information if you're just sort of starting out and kind of interested and you want to sort of dip your toe in the water of exporting. That Trade Tools website has a lot of links to a lot of different places and, sort of tries to answer some of your early questions. We also have an international trade hotline. If you want to take a next step and you actually want to talk to someone and ask them some questions, we have a real person who will answer the phone on our international hotline. So all that information is on our website. this is in addition to counseling that the SBDC and our Ditto can provide you about developing an export plan and getting in touch with additional resources. So there's really a lot of information for you available if you want to take that first step. Then next, our Office of International Trade, we also have a grant program. So this is one of these rare things that it's actually, right, it's not financing, it's not a loan, it's actually a grant that you can get called the State Trade Expansion Program that can reimburse you for costs associated with export development. So for example, if you go on a trade show, right, to try to find some foreign buyers, you can get reimbursed. If you apply to the program and are successful, you can get reimbursed for those expenses. And sort of the idea of this grant program is really to help small businesses get over that initial hurdle, right? Some of that initial investment that you have to make to try to find foreign buyers. So the State Trade Expansion Program, the STEP program, is a really great resource. And Maine is a really great partner of ours on that program. So I really encourage you to take a look at that, sort of if you're ready for the next step. And then, as I mentioned before, we also have special export financing products, right? Both term loans and working capital loans. These export finance products offer a 90% guarantee that is higher than the traditional SBA loan programs, sort of to incentivize export finance. So like I said, I know there's a panel on Wednesday about that in particular, but we do have these export finance programs, and especially we know how important working capital is for businesses to export. And so I sort of encourage you to sort of, if you're interested, go to that other webinar. And then finally, just so that you know that we're out there, the SBA really is the voice of small business within the U.S. government, right? We work very closely with the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative and the Department of Commerce to try to expand market access via international trade agreements, and to make sure that the needs of small businesses are being addressed, right? So that regulations are not so onerous, right? So that small businesses can actually comply with some of those rules. So we do a lot of work in the policy environment just to try to get the small business voice at the table, and to make sure that small business interests are being reflected in any kind of international trade agreements that we do. Because again, in countries where there are a free trade agreement, right, those are countries that are a lot easier for our US small businesses to export to. So we have a lot of resources in place, but I want to kind of go back to, why exporting and why is exporting important? So if you look at, the official Department of Commerce statistics, the number of small businesses that export is about 267,000 at the last count. So that's a lot of businesses, but it's not, we were sort of looking at this number, and we knew that it's sort of potentially, it's smaller than we actually sort of know about the amount of exporting that is happening. So that number of 267,000, it's really only counting exporters of physical goods, right? So actual, it's leaving aside all of the services and any digital services that may be happening. And it is also only counting transactions above $2,500. So anything below that threshold, even if you're doing that every day, isn't counted. And so we wanted to delve into that number, right? Because we want to kind of get over this myth that trade is like something that only big corporations can do. Because we actually know that, as Mike said, 98% of all US exporters are small businesses. So a lot of small businesses are exporting, and they make up 98% of all the exports in America. So we did what we called, we commissioned a study here at the SBA called the Total Addressable Market Study. And we worked with an international trade specialist, and looking at more sort of survey data of small businesses, we found that the actual number of exporting small businesses is about 1.3 million small businesses who are actually doing some exporting, right? They report that they are doing some exporting. That's almost a 5-fold increase over that 267,000 number. And it's also, this number might, since it's based on surveys, it probably is doing a better job in capturing some of those transactions, under the threshold of $2,500. And again, we're trying to capture this kind of explosion that we saw starting before the pandemic, but also really in the pandemic, of e-commerce and sort of the ease and ability for small businesses to be actually selling their digital services and products overseas. So we know that's also a big area that it's hard for the government to kind of capture, except in survey data. We also wanted to look at, so we have 1.3 million small businesses reporting that they're exporting. We also wanted to look at what is the actual number of small businesses that might be able to export. So we sort of defined, right, what we call tradable sectors. So sectors where a small business has a good or service that they could potentially export. So we would have excluded, sort of very local businesses like a dog walking business, but include a lot more services and sort of any kind of goods that we call tradable sectors. And if you look at that kind of overall number of small businesses that exist in that area of tradable sectors, it's actually about 2.6 million small businesses, and that's 42% of all small employer businesses. So it's really actually a very large number. 42% of all the small businesses out there may, have a product or a good or a service that is potentially exportable. So I'm just trying to say we're seeing a lot of opportunity and a lot of opportunity for small businesses to think about exporting. Most of the businesses, right, in those tradable sectors are small, right? 2/3 of them are under 5 employees. 3/4 have less than 10 employees. So they really are, there's a lot of opportunity and potential for small business to think about export. But sort of knowing that, right, and knowing that lack of information is one of the top barriers that's cited for small business and like why they're not exporting. That's really why we're trying to get the word out about exporting and really just trying to get, sort of more and more better marketing about what services are available to you that are in this overall exporting ecosystem. We're really trying to cast a much wider net to kind of get the word out. One of our strategies that we are working on is focusing on diaspora communities. We know that diaspora entrepreneurs play a really important role in facilitating trade with their countries of origin. They often have a leg up because they might have connections in their home country. They're familiar with the way the business practices, they speak the language. And 62 million Americans are either first or second generation diaspora. So that's really 1 in 5 Americans. America is home to more global diaspora members than any other country, right? We are the melting pot. And as these populations grow, so does their potential for impact as they are, sort of thinking about potentially maybe, starting to, sometimes diaspora businesses start with importing, but then really can move also into exporting, which is, sort of really interesting for us in the SBA. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk on webinars like this, just to get the word out about the opportunity of exporting. I hope that, sort of given that 98% of all exporting is by small businesses, right, accounting for 1/3 of the United States' $2 trillion export value. It's really a huge opportunity, and we want to support you in your export journey. We're really trying to, we really appreciate events like this whole Maine World Trade Week, to be able to get the word out about all of the sort of services both that the SBA has and then other resource partners have, as we work together in sort of this overall export ecosystem. So I just want to thank you so much for your time. And again, and just your interest in exporting. I want to really encourage you to think about it. There's really a lot of resources out there if you're interested, sort of at any level of the process that we have. And so I just want to say thank you so much for having me. Back over to you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Claire, for talking. Thank you so much, Mike, as well. I know whenever they visit, they're always like, we don't want to be in the office. We want to meet people. We want to meet the businesses. And they're always going around the state, meeting everyone. They want to talk to them, and they want to understand what questions you guys have, so that they can then bring that back and try to figure out what policy, right? Because if you don't tell them, they don't know. So they're always meeting, they're always greeting, they're always asking questions. It's a good thing. So if we ever call you up and say, hey, do you want to have a visitor? The answer is yes, right? So again, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Mike. Let's start with the next part of the presentation. So just give me a second here to get these slides show up. Okay. So the next part, all me. So strap in, it's going to be an hour. The world is your oyster, my friends. It truly is. So the purpose of the presentation, this presentation is going to be in 5 parts, as we already talked about. We're in part 1, why export and am I ready? And I'm going to kind of reiterate a lot of what Claire just said in some numbers, right? The slides, it says available upon request, but I'm going to send them to you anyway. So you're going to get all the slides. I'm telling you this now, again, because there's going to be a lot of links in the presentation. And I'm sorry, I talk fast. So what I want you to do is just to listen, just sit back and enjoy the show, right? So what we're going to do, I'm going to just say who I am, why I'm talking to you. We're going to get into why exporting, again, reiterating what Claire just kind of told us. We're going to talk about the need to plan. And then really, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of how would you find your market if you don't know where to start. And then we're going to talk about some of the resources available for this first day, for this first kickoff. So who am I? My name is Peter Harriman. I work for the Maine Small Business Development Center. I am right out of the Portland office. Why we exist, unfortunately, is a sad fact that after 4 years, half of businesses fail. That's the national rate. So we are here, the Maine Small Business Development Center, to offer free business advising to try to change that. We actually did a 3-year study, a survivability study, and people who use the SBDC survived better. They survived the storm, so to say. They survived past year 4. And we offer business planning, we offer startup information, we offer existing business information. Guess what? There's no manuals when you start a business, especially during COVID, when there was the EIDL, the PPP, the MERG, the CDBG, the SVOG, the RRF, and the LMNOP of whatever the government could think of during the pandemic to try to help, right? So point being, we at the SBDC really try to stay on top of the most current topics and the most current information for your businesses to try to help you navigate that, because you're running a business. You don't have time to navigate it sometimes. You need help. So that's where we come in. We're here to help. So how we do that is one-on-one advising. So you work directly with an advisor just like me. We have research reports that we can order from SBDC Net or Vertical IQ. We can come up with industry standards as far as what's going on, and you're getting the topics from full-time staff. This is my job, is to help you. It's not a part-time job, it's a full-time job. So you have questions, I can hopefully help answer them, right? What we don't do is provide legal or accounting advice, okay? So during our conversation, yeah, I've been at it for 8 years, so I can tell you what I've seen in my 8 years, and it's a lot. Trust me, I have some stories, my friends. But during the conversation, I might say, hey, at this point, you might want to talk to a lawyer to look over the contract. You might want to talk to an accountant to talk about S Corp versus LLC or what you want to do. So we have 21 locations throughout the state. So pre-pandemic, it was almost exclusively people would come to our office and meet in person. Post-pandemic, we do both. So if you want to meet in person, more than likely there is an office within driving distance. If you want to meet virtually, we can do that too. Zoom has become our friends. And we cover the entire state of Maine. And how we do that is with a partnership with different host organizations. So when you get an email after requesting advising, it might be a weird email address. Like my email address, like you can see in the bottom of my picture, is peterharriman@maine.edu, because I am hosted by USM. We also have people hosted at CEI, Northern Maine Development, and AVCOG. So that's how we are able to cover the entire state without having to hire a whole bunch of staff and do branding. Right. In 2022, we had some accomplishments of a lot of people served. We created jobs, we created or helped you get capital as far as navigating the loan system or financing system, helped start businesses. And what I'm most proud of is we really ramped up our online access to webinars, whether they be live webinars like this or converting them into YouTube videos so you can watch them at your leisure. I know everyone wants to watch me at 3 a.m. in the morning. I know. Or we have e-courses as well. So if you're particularly interested in marketing or finance, we have courses that actually walk you through and help teach you. If you are interested in advising at the end of this or during any point, our website with the request advising button right in the top right. Once you hit that, we'll get in touch with you to set up an appointment. As I said, we also have a YouTube channel that's become pretty popular. If you subscribe, then you get the notifications that new videos have come up, including this one. Now, let's get on with the meat and potatoes of this day. So, a goal without a plan is really just a wish, right? So, why do we want to export? Let's go through and dig a little deeper into what Claire had given us, right? So 95% of the world live outside the US. There's 3.4 billion e-commerce users worldwide, and exporting allows your business to diversify. We're going to get into a little more than that, right? So I always have people tell me, well, didn't COVID kill global trade? Wasn't there a shutdown of everything? Yeah, it hurt. You can see the COVID effect right there, right? Now, what we got to be careful of is what I'm starting to hear now is the narrative like here, trade growth to slow sharply in 2023. It's a little misleading because yes, they're right. It is slowing sharply compared to this curve right here down from the pandemic. But if you look at the overall trajectory, trade growth around the world is still strong and still growing, right? So it's still got a good trajectory. So long story short is, you're going to hear stuff in the news. You really got to step back and look at the picture of what they're talking about. It is slowing down compared to this ramp up when we had COVID, but overall, it's still strong, right? Now, why are we still talking about COVID? My friends, COVID has created two opportunities for you, both the business to business and the business to consumer. From the business to business side, we all heard about the supply chain disruptions that happened, right? This is a survey that went out by the White House that asked the different industries, have you had a disruption in your supply chain? Every industry said yes, we have had a supply chain disruption. So what does that mean? That means since COVID, if you are a prudent business, you are looking out for other vendors, or you're looking at backup plans with other vendors or suppliers to try to say, hey, maybe the model of using, Tom is not working. Maybe we need to figure out, is there a better supplier? Is there a better distributor? Is there a better way? If that fails, there's got to be a backup plan. So how that helps you, the small business looking at getting into exporting, is for the first time since before COVID, you've got hundreds of businesses who face a supply chain disruption who are now looking for a more stable, predictable plan A, plan B, for their suppliers. So you got more people looking for other suppliers and other distributors because they don't want to be caught red-handed again, right, with the supply chain disruptions. So there's more people looking to do business. The other big change that happened from a psychological standpoint is during COVID-19, everyone started shopping online, right? Claire mentioned the e-commerce number. We'll get to e-commerce in a second, but 52% of people shopped more since the pandemic started. And then 53% are planning to continue their habits that they had. That's more people online, right? And then we're not just talking the US, this is a worldwide survey, right? So we have these two unique opportunities of, for the first time, people are being forced online to shop and they find they like it. It's easy, it's convenient. And you've got a whole bunch of businesses that are saying, hey, we had this huge disruption because we didn't pay attention to our suppliers or our distributors. So maybe we should branch out and find other suppliers and distributors to make sure that doesn't happen again, right? Now, we're talking about retail sales growth in e-commerce. As I said, you got to be careful with the numbers. What we have here is 7 years of double-digit growth, right? And then we do see that the black here is e-commerce, where the red is retail sales, right? So we do see some leveling off, but for e-commerce, I don't believe the leveling off is due to any kind of withdrawal from the internet. If we look at just the e-commerce sales worldwide, it just keeps clicking up, right? And as we, in my prediction, Pete's prediction here, as we see more of South America, Africa, and India starting to get online as they build up more of their infrastructure, this is just going to go up. Because one great thing about e-commerce is it doesn't really care about borders too much, right? If you're on the internet, sometimes I don't know if I'm on a French website, or if I'm an American website, a Canadian website. So e-commerce itself is driving huge global trade. And this one's a business to consumer spread right here. But we can see there's a whole bunch of global trade going on in the billions of dollars. And if we look below on this infographic on each one of these, we can see the year-over-year change is double digits for every category. So e-commerce is growing. This opportunity is right there. Now, when we take a step back, because we have to, if we're thinking about exporting, we have to look at the entire global economy, right? We've got a war going on, or conflict, I should say, with Russia. There's, of course, a possible recession hitting the US, and there's a recession or slow economic growth in Europe. And you can see that in these 2023 forecasts. America's growth rate's pretty low, Europe's low, and Russia's pretty low. But we can see South America, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, they're still right up there. And granted, this is GDP, so let's look at some sales numbers. We're looking at retail sales growth worldwide by region from 2020 to 2022, right? So it does capture COVID in 2020 and what happened there. But we can see in 2022, if we look at the worldwide sales and who is doing above average, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Middle East and Africa, and Asia Pacific. The three I just mentioned as far as their GDP is going up. So long story short is, while America might be in a recession, there's other parts of the world that are not. Right? Now, what about Maine, right? Because we kind of hear about all this global stuff, but we never really talk about Maine. And I don't want to steal too much thunder because I do know that Maine International Trade Center, which we often refer to as MITSI, so if you ever hear MITSI, that's what we're referring to. They're going to talk about Maine specific stuff on day 2. So tomorrow, tune in. That is what they're going to talk about. But just briefly, Maine exports 3.42 billion. Our top 5 is natural gas, aircraft parts, crustaceans, electronic circuits, and fixed wing aircraft, right? So that was very interesting. Natural gas has really eked out the top place lately. But what I found more interesting is where we're sending this to. Now, when you look at this, Canada obviously is the biggest part of this graph, right? The blue is Canada, and we like Canada because they are so close to us. Yes. But what I found more interesting is, look at, this is the top 10 countries that Maine exports to. I was expecting China to be a lot bigger, to be honest. I'm completely honest with you. China wasn't that big, especially when you compare them to the other top 10. So Maine has a very good spread of doing export trades around the world. Because if you look, these aren't necessarily next to each other. There's Mexico, there's Japan, there's the Netherlands, there's Belgium, South Korea. So there's a good spread. So the Maine International Trade Center especially, there's probably missions and or programs and or businesses that are already trading with these countries that they might be able to connect you to if you're thinking about starting to export. And that's part of why we bring in the panel on the last day, is to say, hey, you're not too small, you're not too, it isn't daunting, it is daunting, but it's not something you can't overcome. We're trading with the rest of the world, you can too. Right? So, okay. So up until now, I've been kind of telling you who and how much, but not really why. Why should I export? Really, that's really the main thing. I don't care who is exporting as much as why should I export. So let's go through some of the benefits to a business on exporting, right? Of course, you increase your products, your service demand because you're selling more. You can increase your profitability, like Claire said, when they did a study, the small businesses that were exporting ended up being more profitable than those who did not export on general, in average. You increase your competitiveness because now you've got a couple different markets that you're able to go between. So you are competitive. You can expand your customer base. So where normally you have a very targeted market, now if you go to another country, maybe you can expand that market a little bit. So you can actually grow who your customer client base is. With Maine in particular, we have a very cyclical business cycle, right? It's very seasonal. With exporting, you can smooth out some of that business cycle so that it's not as seasonal. So there's some benefit there. And if it comes to competition, if you're exporting, it actually helps defend your domestic market if you ever have a competitor coming in trying to squeeze you out. Some more benefits, as Claire said, it insulates your market. Where America is having a possible slowdown or recession, not true in other parts of the world. They're having an economic boom. I think I saw in South America, Ghana, which is not the one in Africa, that's a different country. They're having like a 16% business boom. So what you can do is, as one market slows down, you have that other market to rely on who might be picking up the slack, right? You can saturate different markets, and this is interesting. If your market is, like the Koreas, very savvy in technology, they might be okay. There might be other markets that don't mind the older products, right? So if you have a product that in one market isn't going to sell because it's not new enough, you can go to the other market and export them and still get a good money, a good profit off of it, because they don't care if it's new. So you can actually increase the life cycle of your products depending on which market you go to. You utilize your full production capability, so you don't have any stalled production going on because you're trying to pump out orders, and you can increase the value of your business. Just the value of your business goes up if you're looking at either intellectual property licenses or you're looking at the value of your business in general. It's more valuable if you're exporting. The last thing is we do have special financing programs that the U.S. government offers. Right, is for import-export markets. We got free trade agreements, and I'm not going to steal too much of that thunder because that is going to be on day 3. So if you want, especially on the financing, you hear from local banks, you hear from XM Bank, you hear from the SBA. That's the webinar that you're going to want to tune in on for financing. Now, am I ready to export? The big question, am I ready? 2 immediate questions come to mind as an advisor to a client who says, am I ready to export? Right. How are you going to do it? Where are you going to do it? How do I even start? I don't know what I don't know. That's what I often hear. So usually I say, hey, you really should start with writing a business plan. As much as you want to groan about writing a business plan, getting all the knowledge in your head, writing it down, and having a nice plan all planned out is one of the first steps I would do. The second, where is what I'm going to help you with today, is where do I find the possible places to export? I mean, the world is my oyster. It's open, right? So first, when we're looking at the plan, why start with a business plan? It's because it gets to the right questions, right? Because it's going to be a very similar plan to your regular business plan. And we're going to cover this in detail because that's how important it is. It's got a whole day to the business plan on day 4. So this is the best first step, is the business plan, to understand if you are ready. So tune in on day 4. Grace from Women's Business Center is going to go through that business planning process. As I said, the international business plan is just like the regular business plan, only you got a few more things to think about, right? Risk mitigation, growing economies, population, healthcare, internet access, ease of doing business. And these are things that you're going to be researching. And that's where we're going to get to next, right? Because the biggest question that you're going to have to answer once you think, hey, I'm ready to export, I'm going to take that step. It's going to be, where am I going to go? There's literally an entire world out there. So some tools to help you find the markets. As I said, Grace will cover the business plan on day 4. Today, we're going to say, if I'm just dibbling my toes in the lake, trying to test the water, where exactly am I looking? So remember I said global traffic was up for the internet? Guess what? As big brother as it sounds, the power of Google can be harnessed for good. And they have something called the Google Market Finder. Again, there's a link. We're going to send you the slides. So there's going to be more links coming up. So with the Google Market Finder, it is helpful if you already have a website address, or if you don't have a website, if you have a competitor website, because it does try to pull the products from the website so it can do a search online of it. Otherwise, you can, I'll get to it, you can put in your own products. It's great to explore your potential markets, very low key, because the Google Market Finder cuts out one big headache, so to say, of finding what your harmonized code is, and that we'll get to later. So if we go with Google Market Finder and you type it in, this is the website that you're going to be finding. And I'm very much a let's go through it kind of guy. So right on the very beginning, it says, hey, there are some disruptions because of possible conflicts in the world, so take it with a grain of salt. But for the most part, Google is good. So when you open these plus marks, you're going to have different data sets. But really, we're going to start here. We're going to hit the Get Started button because these different data sets, we could click them if we want, each one of them. And each one of them will get us to a separate data set that isn't specific to us, right? It's just going to get us data insights or operations, right? But if we hit the Let's Get Started, it's going to get, where would you like to start, right? And if you hit that maybe later, start exploring the market finder first, then you don't have to enter any information. You can just kind of search, but it is helpful if you do enter information because you'll get a report. So if we hit explore operations, like I said, then it's going to get you to a whole network of articles and information on global payments, localization, and it just dives deeper and deeper into the specific topic. So it's got a lot of just raw data inside of it, right? Or if we hit explore marketing and we look at global marketing strategy and go down into that, right? So it has this whole big wide breadth. So if you don't want to log in or you don't want to create an account or you don't want to give any information, you can hit that maybe later button and still get a lot of information from Google. But let's say you do want to dive in. You can first test your export readiness, right? So Google has this kind of test that you can take to see if you're ready to export. And when you do that, again, you're going to enter your website into the address. And it goes through just a few different questions, right? And then at the end of it, it's going to give you your score of how ready they think that you are to export. It doesn't take very long. It's a very 3,000-foot view of are you ready or not? And to be honest, I wouldn't even bother with that. Instead, I would go into the dive into new markets section of the Google Finder, right? When you dive into new markets, again, it wants you to enter a valid URL, right? A valid website address, because it wants to scan your website and figure out what products or services you're selling. So then it can go online and figure out what countries and what search results might be best for you, right? I blacked this out because I did put someone's web address in it just so I could pull something up. And because Maine has so much aircraft, I pulled up an aircraft one. And so, as I said, I couldn't find aircraft necessarily on that, so I added the category and I put it in here, the personal airplane and aircraft parts and accessory. You can see it down here below it. And you can add different categories if you need to, if you feel like the website didn't really capture everything that you wanted it to, right? So when I click on the get results, it gives me this kind of, here's your top, it says 2, 3, 4, USA is number 1. So 2, 3, 4, your top 4 results, right? If you expand that, it actually gets you a little more information on why these would be your top results. Again, we're just trying to figure out if out of this whole wide world, where should I focus? And there's a lot. You get up to 20 to 50 results. So it ranks them all. And then if you see up here, it kind of tells you, hey, if we're thinking of e-commerce, especially, how many monthly searches went on with this particular topic in mind? What's the Google ad competitiveness, household income, ease of doing business? This is one is crucially important when you're looking at doing business with another country, right? And let's say you select the top 3 because you want more detailed information, right? It's going to come up with a profile for you that you can then go into, right? And all these different topics you can get into. So you can look at the ease of doing business. This data, remember, it's Google. It's collecting data from all around the website, all around the world. So it's getting data not from just Google. This is searching World Bank to figure it out. The next one, we got Unicode, we got WorldPlay, we got the NAFTA, we got a whole bunch of stuff. Payment methods, like Claire said, there's been issues with payments. So this one would allow you, hey, in the different countries that I have, what's the typical payment that I should expect and what's the percentage, right? So you're preparing yourself for, is this country one I really want to dive into? Because there's other websites that I'm going to show you where you can do a deep dive into that country. But right now we don't want to commit, right? We just want to say, I'm just curious, just where would I go, right? as I said, one of the more beneficial categories that I found was this logistics over here. And when you get into the logistics section, it gives you information like how long it will take to cross the border, what the ranking is as far as the ease across the border. And this is particularly because I saw some of you signed up who might have fruit, berries, or other perishable materials. So the logistics section in the Google Market Finder is going to help you understand, hey, this is going to spend 3 days at the dock just waiting to get moved. You know, do I have to do special packaging or do I look at another country? So Google Market Finder, as I said, really kind of helps you get started, right? It's real easy, non-committal. You can kind of play around with it and see a whole bunch of stuff. But it doesn't really get into a lot of the nitty-gritty that you're going to want to enter into your business plan later on. So it's just the introduction, I'm just flirting with the idea. So I just wanted to have a nice website to do. So if you find countries or you're like, okay, I want to get a little more serious about what I'm doing, then the first thing to do is to find what's called your product code. It's Schedule B or the harmonized system. Schedule B is technically a 10-digit number that you're going to find. The harmonized system uses 6 digits. There's a couple different websites here that you can find them. So if you go to the census website, for instance, and I enter apples, right? It's going to ask me, hey, what kind of apples are these? Because it does matter. Are they fresh, frozen, dried? What are they? So I'm going to enter what they are, and it's going to give me both the harmonized code for apples in general, that's the 080810, and it's even going to give me some more specific product code. That's the lower number that has the 10 digits on it. So you can use either one of these codes in searches to try to figure out, okay, tell me a little bit more about my product and what's going on with the trade around the world for imports and exports. And that's where we come up to more databases, right? And I'm giving you plenty of them because you can use them all at your will. They're all free. Some of them do require you to sign up for an account, but it's free, right? Most of these websites are from the government. So if we go to the census database and we enter the apples in the top portion here, you enter the Apple code, it's going to get you all the information for US exports of apples certified organic, right? And each one of these buttons down here, you can click, you can get more information on them. Another system, that system's good, but I like this one the best, to be honest. The Google Market Finder is great for the initial, let's see what the world offers, but this one I really like. This one is the International Trade Center, the trade map, right? And a little hint to the wise, if you didn't like getting your product code from that last system, you can get it from this system if you just hit apples, right? Just put apples in the search box. It's going to get you a whole bunch of them. I'm going to go to the previous. I want to highlight this because, like Claire said, it's very hard to pick up on services that are being offered. Up until recently, it was really just products that were looked at. So now we're really focusing on some of the services, especially the electronic services are going across. So in this one, you can tell that they are starting to incorporate or try to track what services are there. So those service-based businesses, we got a website or a database for you. As I said, you type into the search on what you want. So let's say apples, and then it's going to get you all the information. As I said, these buttons down here and these maps and graphs at the bottom get you a plethora of information on what you want. But you do want to pay attention to just the buttons, right? Imports, exports, because the little buttons, big difference, right? There's the import map, there's the export map. Very different information. These are the countries exporting and these are the countries importing. So you do want to make sure when you're pulling data from any of these databases that you're very specific with that. And we can help too. That's why we're here. So we can help you go through and sift through some of this information and understand it. Another system that's out there, this one's it's in its beta version. I talked to them a little while ago, and they were still, it says beta, but it's actually up and running. It's live, and there's the email or the website address right there. This one is a market diversification tool. So the downfall to this one is it assumes you are already exporting. So if I enter my information, I enter the apples. I played around with it. I couldn't leave that current market blank, and United States was not an option. So I had to put something in. So I just put Canada in, right? And I put my zip code. And then it comes up with, very similar to Google Market Finder, it's going to come up with the different scores for the different countries. And if you click that little plus button, it's going to expand on some of the information. And if you click the little link at the bottom of the information, you can actually change the weights of what has been scored so that you can weigh the ease of business, or you can take out landlocked countries, whatever parameters you think you might be more important to your specific business. This one can get in a little fine-tuned as far as what is the perfect score for a country, or what country scores the highest for what I'm trying to do. Right now, there is a whole slew of information out there as far as data, just to fill your head with. Again, getting the data and understanding the data, two different things. So that's where day 4, the business planning, is going to come in, as far as, hey, we got all this data. What do we do with it? Are we ready to export? But these are a lot of different data links. Again, you're going to get the PowerPoints. You're going to get all these different links. Because this one really takes the cake, right? So I went through and I said, okay, what are some really good websites just to get information that I might need, just so I can understand how to do this. So these are different links to different data points, as well as the previous one, that just lets us know, hey, this is information that we would need to get ready for importing and exporting. Now, there's also the local resources, right? So that's one of the issues that I found when I was an advisor, or as I'm an advisor at the SBDC, is a lot of people go online and they get lost. They get lost in all the details and all the different information that's there. That's why we have local people on the ground with the SBDC, the Women's Business Center, SCORE, or the SBA itself, right? So all 4 of us are your people on the ground. So the websites, the databases, that's all tools that you have available that you can do your own searching for. But what we're here for, especially, is to kind of help you think through it, think through the logistics. Mitzi's going to kind of talk a little bit more about the shipping logistics. Day 4, we're going to talk about the business planning with Grace. Day 3, we're going to talk about the financing. How do we put this together if we need financing, especially working capital and or that credit, to make sure that we get paid. So there's a lot of different information that's going to be coming up on these days. So to summarize what we talked about today, is exporting has a lot of advantages. The advantages Claire went through, the advantages I went through. Remember, it's at this point in history where we have those 2 business to business and business to consumer situations happening, where business to business, you have that supply chain disruption. So you got all these businesses that are looking to ramp up their supply chain. So they're looking for more distributors, more suppliers, actively, more regions. And then we have the business to consumer, where more and more people have been driven online, and more people are spending online and feeling comfortable spending online. I don't know about you. I have bought clothes online where I never bought clothes before, right? I always had to try them on. Now I'm comfortable buying jeans online. It's okay. So you got a whole generation that suddenly is moving online. And we got other countries, major players, who are going to be building their infrastructure up over the next few years to get online as well. So I only see that growing. So those 2 situations has really made it very advantageous as far as timing to get into exporting. As I said, there are many benefits to exporting itself, as far as smoothing the cycle out, or increasing profitability or diversifying your market in case there's some kind of trouble in one market, not so much bleeding over to the other one. But the very first step in doing this is working on that business plan, understanding, taking a look at yourself and understanding, am I ready for that? And that's not an easy answer, right? You're going to look at your product, you're going to look at your production cycle, you're going to look at your services, you're going to say, can I ramp up? Can I offer the services? What happens if I expand? What's the logistics? How do I plan this out? What is the increased costs? Because I want to make sure I still make a profit when I do this. And that's why the 5th day with the peers, people who have been in your shoes, who are going to kind of tell you, hey, you can do it. It's daunting, it's terrifying, but you can do it. That's why that is so important, because you're going to hear it from other people. I can talk someone blue in the face, but I am just an advisor, right? You want to hear from someone who's actually been there and done that, as far as, yes, they have imported and exported, right? So today we went through a lot of databases on the Google Finder, just dipping your toes in the water to kind of say, hey, where might I want to look? And then 3 other resources to really get into the nitty gritty of information on how are other countries doing it, where might I want to get a little more information on. So again, I use the Google Market Finder to kind of whet my appetite, and then the other ones to get really nitty gritty into it. And then, like always, reach out to the resource partners. Mitzi's going to come on tomorrow, so they're going to talk about a few other resource partners that we have available to help you with the logistics, especially. But then there's, throughout this whole event, is going to be SBDC and Women's Business Center right along with the SBA to tell you about exporting, and that we're here for it. Okay. Where I know I'm wrapping up early, guys. I thought I was going to go the whole hour, but I am wrapping up early. So I want to open this up to some questions because it is the first day. So sometimes we get some questions on what to expect for the remainder days. I think I've hammered that in a little bit. So let me check the chat just to make sure it's there. No Africa. I saw Willie said there's no Africa was that Maine exporting. I pulled that export from government websites. So the top 10 countries was the only ones that were shown on my slides. So if we export to an African country, it probably didn't show up on the top 10 countries. Listed African countries, main exports too. Well, hold on. Let me see if I can pull my slides up here. I'll go through the top 10 countries real quick, just for giggles. So there was China, Algeria, Canada, Malaysia, Netherlands, Japan, Mexico, Philippines, South Korea, and Belgium were the top 10 countries that Maine exports to currently, as of I believe that's 2020 data or 2021 data. Okay, we got an email. Are there any other questions about what to expect for this week, or other resource partners that you'd want to talk to, or maybe just your experience as you're just starting out to do this journey? I know I talk fast and I apologize. That's why we record these things now. But you will have a YouTube link.
I have a quick question.
Of course.
So my name is Tom Fox with Fox Forestry. We do a lot of importing and a little bit of exporting. We're in the forestry equipment sales. So we're importing sawmills from Sweden and firewood processors from Finland.
Yep.
And we have companies both in Canada and in Sweden. And we're learning now how to develop in our exporting. So we just finished the export tech class.
Oh, great.
With
Yeah.
Mitzi. And that was really helpful.
The export
That was
tech
really
help, yeah.
What would you say beyond having a business plan, and what would you say the SBA or the SBDC could help us with? We understand that we're going to have, because we have we're going to be selling to ourselves essentially. So we are our own channel partner. We would have selling to a company in Canada, importing from Canada, maybe some other products that we could sell in the US, and we've been doing this back and forth. What would you say about, like, say, transfer pricing, establishing MSRPs, establishing, you know, international trade pricing, as far as like whether a trade lawyer or something like that? That's question number one. And then question number two, looking at potential funding for our like what's available for us as we ramp up, because we did a few things during this pandemic, but one was we started to diversify our product line, and then we also started to look closely at how we were packaging things. And I know that we're not alone when this happens, you know. But
Yeah,
we got United States products, and now we're looking at our current trends in the United States and how to export these to other countries during this pandemic. But the two questions: trade pricing with each other, you know, transfer pricing, and then potential funding to help us export U.S. products.
Yep. The funding, I'm not going to steal the funding thunder from day 3.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Day 3.
So the export financing has a ton of information. We have
Nice.
XM Bank, we have SBA, and we have 2 local banks coming to
Okay.
that one. So I don't want to steal the thunder on that one.
Is Camden one of them?
That's all going to be the day 3 is all about
Day
finance.
3, baby. Hang tight. You got it.
Day 3, hang tight, right?
Nice.
Now, the primary question, the first question about pricing, that gets a little, especially a little complicated because it's, you know, transfer pricing versus just regular pricing. But I would say it would boil down basically to regular pricing, right? Where you're going to have to really look at, you know, pricing comes into 3 categories. The first category being cost. You're really going to have to understand the logistics
Delivered.
on how the product moves, what the cost is at each level of that movement, to try to figure out, okay, we have to pay for just the direct cost, the indirect cost, the profit that we need, the taxes we're going to pay on that, any value added taxes that other countries might slap onto that as well, any tariffs, and it's all going to come down to the numbers of, okay, what do we need for, you know, transfer pricing might be a little weird, but what do we need for a profit margin, right? To be able to do this, to make it worthwhile, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to come down to a math problem. But then once you're done with the math, then you have to flip it over to the competitive section, right? Because if your math is too high, then you're going to say, well, why would that company, even though it's our own, buy it from us at a higher price when we could just buy it half off somewhere else?
Sure.
Right. So you have to look at the competitor section to see where you're at, right? Transfer pricing, especially because if you do all the numbers and cut out some of the expenses because you got some synergy going on, you don't want to price it too low, right?
True.
So when you look at the competitors, you might say, oh, you know, the nearest competitor is 20% more than us, so maybe we can bring it up, you know, 10%. And still make everyone, because with transfer, it's almost like you're shuffling money around, right? It's like
a little bit, and but like if we were to look at it from if we're often on the importing side, so if I'm importing from Scandinavia or the Nordic countries and I'm selling in the United States, I would take my delivered price and then add my margin. And if I don't understand what my delivered price is, I've got to clear it through customs. I got to pay for the transit, X works, right? So we take the B2B cost plus the transit plus the customs equals a landed cost and then we would add our margin. And then if the MSRP is set by if we don't set the MSRP, which can also happen, then we're looking at what happens when our shipping triples, because this happened to us. And that just came right out of our margin. So our sales were phenomenal. However, the profit of those sales were dramatically different than the year before, because it went from 4,800 to 5,200 a container to 16,700. Same B2B cost. So we learned this from experience, and it wasn't always pretty still.
No, and take it with a grain of salt too, right? Because costs have been very astronomical in their swings. So this isn't typical, I would say, but to kind of mitigate that risk going forward, I always advise, there's got to be a cost increase. Everything costs more with time, right? Your costs aren't going to be stagnant. So you gotta not have that stagnant MSRP. It's got to be changing. And depending on what the life cycle of the product is how quickly that price has to increase, right? And typically we tell clients 3% per year is the average for cost increase that you'd want to see at a minimum.
Okay.
Take it with a grain of salt, because this past 2 or 3 years we've seen 11, 12, 18% in some industries, right? So astronomically above what we would have expected or planned for. But if you do those increases and make sure your MSRP doesn't get static, it can buff some of those shocks out, right?
Got it.
But ultimately it is going to come down to the math of was the MSRP that we have, is that enough of that margin?
Sure.
And once you do set it, like you said, in the short time before you have that increase, you're going to have to, there's only one place it can come out of, right?
Yeah.
The only place it can come out of is your profit, right?
And what was happening to us in that scenario is we weren't getting the shipping bills until after we received the product. And to be honest with you, we were selling so much that it was not looked at until after. And then we started looking at the loads and looking at what we paid to get them here, and we were like, math is off.
Crazy, right? Crazy.
Let me ask you, so if you were SBDC, we haven't really done much with you guys yet, but let's just say, for example, you take us on as a company, and then we're like, hey, could you help us with this over here, or this is where we're headed? Tell us what it's like to be associated with you guys, and like, do you have to be a certain level company to get in there, or do you graduate from the SBDC, or is it just a relationship that once you begin, you just kind of stay with each other?
We're like the Hotel California, right? You're not talking about. So with SBDC, we're advisors. We work with other partners too. It's not like you choose the SBDC and then you can't choose Women's Business Center or SCORE or anything like that. We often work together. And everything that we do, unless told otherwise, is confidential, right? We ever are going to break confidence, it's because you've signed a waiver with us, and it's probably a success story that we want to promote.
Sure.
But we've been used many different ways. We've been used as ways to get just raw data, do research reports. We've been used as far as a sounding board, saying, hey, can you logistically help me think this through? We've been used as like with your pricing, right? You kind of say, hey, I broke down the pricing. Does it all look okay? Like, what am I missing here? Right? We do have a fine line where we can't cross into actually being a business consultant. Like, you pay a business consultant for a product, like, tell me what my MSRP should be. That's a business consultant. Help me look at my MSRP. Does it look like, with all these variables, does it look striking distance?
Make sure you got the variables right. Yeah, that's good. So that's good. The SCORE program is awesome. I've had a SCORE mentor for a while, and I can't say enough good things.
Yeah, in Maine it's one of the only states I know of that's very collaborative with all of the resource partners. So you can use us in different ways, right? SCORE is great because they have mentors that have been on the ground and done it, right? So they're great.
Close by.
Yeah, and then Maine
Locally.
SBDC, we have knowledge of just a lot of the general
Mm.
stuff. We can look at all the math and all that jazz. Then we have the Women's Business Center, who also has their own take on things, and then there's the SBA on top of that.
Yeah,
So
cool.
and we don't mind sharing. As I said, it's so Hotel California. So yes,
That's
we
good.
might solve one issue, the MSRP issue, right? Another issue is
Yeah.
going to come up eventually, right?
Cool.
So
Do
you
you
can
have
use
somebody that specifically handles like we come to you guys, or a business would come to you guys and you say, hey, here's the here's the scenario, and then you guys listen to the scenario and then advise, say, okay, you need to talk to this person, or
yes,
like
so sometimes
the trade maps that you shared. That's really good.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, sometimes the best advice we can give is, hey, there's another resource partner that can answer that question that maybe you didn't know about, right? And we say, okay, like Maine International Trade Center, they do
Mhm.
great promotions, but sometimes people don't know they have that export class, right?
Gotcha.
So they might say, hey, you know what? All the things you're saying, you might fit this. So that's where all of our partners tend to do as well. So, SCORE might say, hey, you should do this webinar, or you should do this. And it's basically just our mission in general for the SBDC, Women's Business Center, SBA, or SCORE is to make you a successful business person. And
Okay.
that's what, and that often is sharing resources and or rolling up the sleeves and trying to help you. Again, making sure we don't cross that line of
Understood.
But
Understood. The more we dig into this, and the more that we understand about ourselves and about what our strengths are, the more we're interested in partnering with more Maine businesses. So, for example, I would love to be introduced to somebody who's in manufacturing who could look at branding some of our own machines, and
Yeah.
I don't know who, like, we're always looking for interesting opportunities, and we've partnered up with a Amish family in southern Kentucky to sell the world's largest commercial bandsaw mills, and I'm promoting these and selling these in the EU. And the part of our goal is to get these in British Columbia as a part of our export class. And it was been through working with these Amish family that I'm like, hey, we could be doing more things in Maine.
Yep.
And then we could be branding these things and learning how to export them. So I look for people to help us here.
And another resource partner that I'm going to share with you, I don't think they're
Okay.
on the webinars, but the Maine Manufacturing Extension Partnership.
Perfect.
And I'll hopefully Kelsey reminded me, but I'll include this link in the follow-up email that you'll get with the slides.
Nice.
And all that stuff. But yeah,
that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's often a lot of resources out there that can help with specific problems. It's just a lot of the times, and this is the conundrum for us, our mandate says we can't spend money on advertising. Our money is spent with you, one-on-one. So a lot of the times you don't hear about some of these programs, and that's why we're doing Export Week, right?
Yeah.
There's programs out there that you can utilize for free. You're a taxpayer, so
Yeah.
you already paid for it. Use it.
Super good. I'm really grateful for this.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've touched on a few of them. You touched on the Maine International Trade Center class and SCORE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been working with SCORE because what happened. I mean, for me, I guess what happened was we got some of this money.
Yep.
We got the EIDL money. This is money we got loans for. We got EIDL, PPP. I was in the website looking for things, and then I was like, oh my goodness, a SCORE mentor. So I got in touch with that, and that has been phenomenal.
Because the biggest thing, just like exporting and countries change, information changes. Programs come and go.
Sure.
And you'll drive yourself crazy trying to look just in the internet to try to find them. It's almost impossible, right? You're like, oh, that ended 10 years ago. Oh, why do you still have a website, right? So that's where we come in. All the resource partners are, hey,
Nice.
like the finance, I definitely suggest going to day 3, right? The finance can be like, oh, look, we have special financing that's been tweaked for this particular error, right?
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha. Cool.
Yep.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you answering the questions. Thank you so much. I'll give it somebody else if they have some more questions. Take it.
Sure, yeah, no, great questions. Yeah. I know we have a lot of participants. Yeah, so I'm going to talk, and anyone has a question, throw it in chat or just unmute yourself and chime in. As I said, we got a great week that we have planned. It's a blockbuster week. Today was just the whole, let's get you started. Why should you import or export? What are the benefits to your business? What are some simple steps you can do just to get started? And again, that's why I like the Google Market Finder. It's very low key. You can do it while you're watching a TV show tonight. Just enter in a few things and say, if I was going to export, what's the top 3 countries that it thinks I could export to? As again, you're going to slides.
What are the goals? What are the goals of the grant program, the state trade that Claire had talked about? There was a grant program with state trade, 1.3 million in business. I was just curious to see what you guys were, what your goals were to try to get from that funding.
I think I'll have to have another resource partner talk on that one because
Okay.
SBDC, the downfall of SBDC is we don't offer funding.
Gotcha.
Grace just put in
Mitzi will talk about it tomorrow.
Yep. They'll talk about the STEP program tomorrow. Yeah. And that has been a game changer for a lot of businesses because I'm not going to steal the thunder. Oh,
yeah, I'll
No.
just briefly say that. Hi,
Yeah.
Tom. Hello, everyone. It's to help small businesses export, reach more markets. So it's to help kind of attending trade shows, compliance, and we'll go into more detail in that. But it's just to have more resources for you for international business development and retention. I hope this helps, Tom, and everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so each day is packed pretty well. And to your
Cool.
point, you had asked as well, what size, is there a size for too small or too big? There is an SBA size standard. So if you're, I don't know, it varies by industry, but if you're doing 5 million in sales or 500 employees or something like that, then you might be too big for the Small Business Development Center. But as far
Gotcha.
as how small, I deal with some export businesses that are just one person and they're not even making the product. They're just a middle person that takes the product and has a connection in another country and sells it over there. Right.
Cool.
So there you could be one person. Most of the time I do see where there's a few different people because I'm not gonna lie.
It takes a lot.
Yeah, it's an added task. Right. And that's what stops a lot of people from doing it is they're like, well, I'm already kind of overwhelmed with what I'm doing now. I can't imagine adding a whole nother market into it. But the rewards can be many, right? And a lot of people just kind of take themselves out of the running automatically saying either I'm too small or I wouldn't know how to do it. And then they never take that step. So that's what we're trying to do is encourage at least to look. Right, at least kind of dabble your toes in just to see if it might be interesting. Because once you get over the logistics, like everything else, like when you guys first started, it was probably overwhelming. And now, as
I would say most of the time it still is because I won't stop.
Well, you guys are diversifying products. You're
right? For sure.
Countries, so you're growing. That's the good.
It's hard to stay without. It's hard to. It's okay though. It's good. It's the right kind of growth.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like everything in life. Once you look back, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did it. Right.
Mhm.
But when you first start, you're like, I do not want to wake up today. Not to discourage people.
No, no.
The benefits outweigh the amount of work that you put in.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any final questions when we wrap up 3 minutes? Final 3 minutes, 3-minute countdown. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again to Claire and Mike for coming on. Thank you for Brad Curry with the SBA to help coordinate all of this. And especially thank you to Grace, partner in crime with the Women's Business Center, who took on a lot of the tasks too. And as I said, tomorrow, going to be very interesting with Maine International Trade Center, because they got the STEP program and they got a lot of information on Maine and some logistics. They are a great resource.
Oh, yeah.
I know you've used them, Tom, but anyone listening who hasn't used them,
I would just speak highly of that unbelievable group of people. I'm really proud to have met them and be part of it. Yeah, and I know everybody that
Thank you.
joined us. Yeah, super good.
So thank you again to everyone. You'll see me again tomorrow, and we'll YouTube this. We will send those who signed up the slides and the link. And any questions that do come up, that's one of the reasons I have my email in my box here. You can certainly feel free to email me. Thank you.